When Stars Fell in Florence. In the heart of Florence, where the Arno River gleams beneath the warm kiss of twilight, lived a young painter named Luca. He had inherited a small studio from his grandfather near the Ponte Vecchio, a place filled with half-finished canvases, the scent of oil paints, and memories whispered by brushstrokes. Luca was talented, but he no longer painted with the passion he once had. His muse had abandoned him years ago when his childhood love, Isabella, moved to Paris to pursue ballet. She had promised to return, but time wore away at promises like waves on stone. He stayed behind, painting the river, the light, the sky, everything but the feeling of love. One rainy afternoon in late spring, Luca took shelter beneath the awning of a small bookstore. As the rain danced upon the cobblestones, a soft voice behind him said, "Do you still chase the rain like we used to?" He turned, and there she was. Isabella. She was different now. Her hair slightly shorter, her eyes deeper, her smile more fragile. She had returned to Florence after a career-ending injury that left her unable to dance. "I came back because I remembered this city held more than just steps," she said quietly. "It held you." For days, they walked the old streets, shared espresso in narrow alley cafes, and talked of dreams deferred but not forgotten. Luca started painting again, first timidly, then obsessively. Only now, his canvases shimmered with color, with motion, with feeling. He painted her dancing not on stage, but in the morning light by the window, in the soft hush of a rainy afternoon, in the way she smiled when she thought no one was watching. As summer bled into autumn, their bond deepened, not with fiery declarations, but quiet gestures. A hand on the small of her back. The way he looked at her when she wasn't looking. The way she hummed his name like a melody she'd once danced to. But Isabella, ever the realist, was scared. "I can't be your muse, Luca," she said one evening, standing on the bridge where they first kissed as teens. "What if I break your heart again?" He took her hands in his, eyes unwavering. "You're not my muse. You're my heart. I don't paint because of you, I paint because love found its way home." That night, beneath a sky dusted with stars, they kissed again, older now, more fragile, but infinitely more real. Years later, tourists visiting the gallery just beyond the Arno would pause before a large painting titled "When Stars Fell in Florence." It was of a woman with sorrow in her eyes and joy in her smile, dancing barefoot in the rain. Beside the painting, a small card read, "To the one who brought color back into my life. You were never just a memory. You were always the masterpiece." Where the river meets the stars. The small town of Elmridge was wrapped in the gentle silence of autumn, where golden leaves fluttered down like whispers from the past. Along the riverbank stood a modest little bookstore, the Paper Lantern, known for its mismatched chairs, the scent of coffee, and a quiet warmth that drew lonely souls in from the cold. It was there that Claire Bennett met Elias Reed. Claire was a literature teacher in her early 30s, soft-spoken with thoughtful eyes and a quiet grace. She came into the shop every Saturday, always with a worn leather notebook and a thermos of chamomile tea. She had dreams of writing, but life had often gotten in the way: family, responsibility, heartbreak. Writing, for her, had become a place to hide instead of a place to bloom. Elias was a former Marine, rugged yet kind, with a voice like wind through pine. He had returned to Elmridge after a decade away, carrying invisible scars and a silence that people mistook for distance. He wasn't particularly interested in books, but the quiet of the shop reminded him of the forests he used to escape to as a boy. And Claire, sitting by the window, her fingers dancing across paper, reminded him of something he'd once believed in: hope. Their connection wasn't instant. It started with glances, then nods. A shared smile. A conversation about Rilke that led to an exchange of favorite poems. Over time, Elias began arriving earlier, lingering longer. Claire started writing again, this time not just for herself, but for him. One rainy afternoon, Elias offered to walk her home. Their umbrellas clashed awkwardly and they laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh. When they reached her porch, soaked and shivering, Elias looked at her like she was something rare, something he didn't think the world made anymore. "Why do you write?" he asked, his voice barely above the rain. Claire hesitated, then whispered, "Because it's the only place I feel brave." He reached out, brushing a raindrop from her cheek. "Then write about this moment." And so she did. Days turned into months. They spent mornings wrapped in flannel and coffee steam, and evenings stargazing by the river. Claire learned about Elias's time overseas, how he lost friends, how the silence afterward had nearly broken him. Elias learned about Claire's past heartbreak, the love that left her without goodbye. They shared their wounds like stories, each one stitched a little tighter with every passing day. But love, no matter how deep, isn't without its trials. Elias was offered a position working with veterans in another state, a role that gave him purpose. Claire, meanwhile, was offered a publishing deal for the novel she'd written, based on a man who spoke through stillness, and a woman who found courage in his presence. They stood once again on her porch, torn between the past they had healed from and the futures calling them forward. "I don't want to lose you," Claire whispered. "Then don't," Elias said. "Let's not let distance decide our ending." So they didn't. For a year, they were apart but never alone. Letters, weekend visits, late-night calls filled the spaces between. And when the time was right, when both had grown into the people they needed to be, Elias returned, not just to Elmridge, but to her. Under the stars, by the river that once watched them fall in love, Elias knelt down, a worn velvet box in his hand. "I came back," he said, his eyes shimmering. "Because wherever you are, that's where I want to be." Claire smiled, tears falling like silver. And in that quiet corner of the world, love, patient, enduring, and real, found its forever.